TV host mocked black entrepreneur, his comeback left the studio speechless. A live TV audience expected entertainment that day. What they didn't expect was to witness a moment that would stop laughter in its tracks. A young black entrepreneur sat across from a seasoned host, ready to share his story. But instead of support, he faced mockery, subtle jabs, and disrespect broadcast to millions. For a few tense seconds, it felt like the host had won. Then came a response, calm, powerful, unforgettable. The question is, what did he say? Subscribe and join our community. Marcus Williams had built his success from the ground up. Growing up in a neighborhood where opportunity was rare and expectations were low, he learned early that if he wanted something, he would have to fight for it. Every late night, every setback, every door slammed in his face only fueled his determination to prove that he belonged at the table. By the time he was invited onto a popular TV talk show, Marcus wasn't just another small business owner, he had become a symbol of perseverance. His company had grown from a tiny startup in his garage into a respected brand, giving jobs and hope to people who had once been overlooked, just like him. That morning, as he adjusted his tie in the studio's green room, Marcus thought this interview was simply another step forward, a chance to share his journey, to inspire others who felt the odds were stacked against them. The stage lights, the cameras, the bustling crew, it all seemed like the reward for years of resilience. But what Marcus couldn't know was that the spotlight he was stepping into wasn't one of celebration. It was one of scrutiny. The host, known for sharp words and hidden smirks, wasn't planning to showcase his success. Instead, Marcus was walking straight into a moment that would test not just his business acumen, but his dignity. The stage was set. The applause sign blinked. And as Marcus took his seat, he had no idea the storm that was waiting on the other side of those questions. The lights dimmed slightly as the cameras zoomed in. Millions of viewers tuned in, expecting another casual interview. At first, the host's questions seemed harmless. Where Marcus grew up, how he started his company, what inspired him. Marcus answered with steady confidence, his voice calm but filled with pride. But beneath the surface, something was shifting. The host leaned forward, his tone sharpening. Instead of celebrating Marcus's achievements, he began picking at them. "So, let me get this straight," he said, his smirk almost invisible to the audience at home. "You're telling us you built all of this without handouts? Without some kind of special program?" The implication hung heavy in the air. Marcus smiled politely, but inside he felt the sting. The host wasn't curious. He was setting a trap, framing his success as something unbelievable, something that needed to be doubted. Then came the laughter. Not from Marcus, but from the studio audience. A joke slipped from the host's mouth, subtle but laced with mockery. He compared Marcus's garage startup to kids selling lemonade on the sidewalk, and shrugged as if his entire business was a lucky accident. The audience chuckled, encouraged by the host's expression. Marcus straightened in his chair. He had faced this kind of doubt before, in boardrooms, in banks, in meetings where his skin spoke louder than his credentials. But here, on live television, the weight of it felt different. He knew that every word he chose next would matter. Not just for him, but for everyone watching who had been dismissed, doubted, or underestimated. Still, the host pressed harder. "Do you really think," he said, pausing for dramatic effect, "that your story is proof of anything? Or are you just an exception, a feel-good headline for people at home?" The words landed like a challenge. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some laughed nervously, others fell quiet, sensing the hostility beneath the host's polished smile. Marcus's heartbeat quickened. Every instinct told him to defend himself, to push back with the truth of his struggle. But he also knew, if he let anger speak for him, he would lose more than the argument. And then, the moment that cut deeper than all the rest. The host chuckled, shook his head, and said lightly, "Well, you know, most guys from your background don't usually end up here. They end up elsewhere." He didn't say the word, but everyone knew what he meant. The laughter that followed was thinner this time, uneasy, but it was there. Marcus's hands tightened on the armrest. He could feel the fire rising inside him. This wasn't just about one man's disrespect. It was about centuries of stereotypes, about every door that had been slammed in his face before this one. And now, under the glare of the cameras, he had a choice to make. Would he let the mockery define the moment? Or would he rise above it, turning humiliation into a statement that could not be ignored? The answer was coming, and no one in that studio was prepared for it. The host's smirk lingered as the cameras captured every second. The laughter in the audience still echoed faintly, though weaker now, almost hesitant. Marcus sat motionless, his heart pounding, his hands pressed firmly on the chair's armrests. For a split second, it seemed like the mockery had won. The weight of stereotypes, the sting of belittlement, and the pressure of millions watching pressed down on him like a storm. And then he lifted his gaze. His voice, calm yet unshakably firm, cut through the studio air. He didn't raise his tone. He didn't need to. Instead, he spoke with a clarity that carried the weight of every struggle, every barrier, every doubt he had ever overcome. "You see," he said steadily, "people like you don't expect people like me to succeed. But that's exactly why I did. Not because the path was easy, but because it was designed to be hard. And I'm still here." The laughter stopped instantly. A silence swept across the studio, heavy and electric. The host blinked, his smirk faltering. For the first time in the segment, he didn't have a comeback ready. Marcus leaned slightly forward, his words sharpened by quiet conviction. "You try to frame me as an exception, but I'm not. I represent every young person told they'll never make it, every entrepreneur denied a loan, every worker overlooked because of their skin. My story isn't an exception. It's proof. Proof that no matter how hard you try to diminish us, we rise!" The audience sat frozen. Some shifted in their seats, others stared with wide eyes. The host's grin collapsed completely, replaced by an uncomfortable silence that the cameras could not hide. In that moment, Marcus had done more than defend himself. He had shattered the script. He had taken the very stage meant to mock him and turned it into a platform for truth. And as the silence grew, one question lingered. How could anyone laugh now? The silence in the studio lasted longer than anyone expected. The host shifted in his chair, but the control he once had over the room was gone. For the first time, the spotlight didn't belong to him. It belonged to Marcus. What was meant to be an attempt to humiliate had instead become a moment of truth, broadcast to millions. When the cameras cut to commercial, the audience erupted, not in laughter, but in applause. People stood, clapping, some even wiping away tears. Marcus didn't celebrate. He simply sat back, steady, knowing that his words had carried more weight than any question the host could throw. After the show aired, the response was immediate. Messages poured in, some from young entrepreneurs saying they finally felt seen, others from viewers admitting they had never realized how subtle mockery could wound deeper than open insult. Marcus had walked into that studio as one man. He walked out as a voice for many. But the story isn't just about one interview, one insult, or one comeback. It's about a larger truth. How often black excellence is questioned, how often dignity is challenged under the guise of humor, and how deeply those moments echo beyond a stage. Marcus's words didn't just silence a host. They exposed a reality millions already knew, that racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smirks, it doubts, it dismisses. And in those moments, it takes courage to stand firm and speak truth. The question we must ask is simple. How many more voices have to rise before respect becomes the standard, not the exception? Because sometimes all it takes is one reply to remind the world silence can be broken. If this story touched you, don't just watch, be part of the change. Hit subscribe and join our community of voices that matter.